Let's talk a little bit about this project that we've been developing since the beginning of, I guess, about the beginning of April. So it's been a real fast track, a sprint to get here. And incredible that we have the champions, Barco and DAZN working together, and Tata and Alluvio working together. So tell me a little bit about how this challenge came together from both from a Tata perspective and Alluvio. Why did this particular challenge?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. See, I have been part of this media, the streaming industry for past about 10 years. So we work with operators, content providers, etc. So we understand some of the pain points. So of what the OTT subscriptions, all that about. So we wanted to see that some of these pain points, how it can be addressed through a means where customers are not required to be part of multiple application subscriptions, and they still be able to watch their favorite content, etc. So that is one of the pain points we saw, and then we tried actually looking at some innovation using blockchain. So I think that's the main idea. It came through existence. So Michelle.
Yes, and I just want to say thank you for allowing us to take part in this. It's been a very exciting project for Alluvio in general. Just to set some context, Alluvio has created a technology platform that is a content-native blockchain. And it makes it possible to have a decentralized storage, content distribution with live and interactive streaming, for example, along with tokenized ownership of the content. And in this case, there really is an opening in OTT platforms, and particularly fan engagement, to create a new type of incentive experience that both unlocks or authorizes the content seamlessly based on owning a token, right, which is effectively a certification, if you will, on blockchain, and at the same time to create some rewards for doing that pass easily from person to person. And we worked together with the Tata team and our core engineering team for a couple of months, actually, to introduce them to our APIs, to evaluate what would be a good workflow for this, and also to demonstrate some forward possibilities with the wallet, which we were just talking about before we came on stage. And I think this is, in a way, sort of at the center of what's possible with Web3 media now.
Yeah, great stuff. And so Tim and then Avram, what attracted you to this challenge?
Well, for us, Barco's been involved in high-end visualization, with projection, video walls, whatever it might be. And the way I like to think about that is what we're doing is creating a high-end digital canvas, right? And then when you think about the content, if there's no high-value content or attractive content, the digital canvas doesn't have any value. But also, in the other side, if you look at things like digital art, for example, you don't want a high-end piece of digital art to just be shown on a TV. And when you start going into that, then it also becomes obvious that on the content side, everything is very fragmented. Yeah. And when you talk about high-value content, things like collectors, connoisseurs, people that are excited about a certain type of content, it's extremely hard to create those communities right now, just because the content is very fragmented, ownership is fragmented. There have been some instances in the past where you thought you had made a collection, and then a single company decides that we're not going to do that anymore, and your collection is gone. So, we are looking for an answer for that, because that's where our digital canvas shines, and vice versa as well. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with streaming.
Yeah.
Like, you want to have running water in your house, but that's not the same as your wine collection. Yeah. Right, so nice. That's a little bit.
I love that concept of ownership again, and also collecting and connoisseurship. I love that, and we'll come back to that to talk about what this could open up in terms of new avenues for fans and collectors. Avram, from a sports OTT platform getting involved in this, what did you see as the potential value?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges that we have, many direct-to-consumer services have, is how to increase our reach, our ability to reach customers and have them become part of our services. Now, content sharing is already out there. It's a major force. There's a lot of transactions in terms of content sharing that are taking place every day. And we are excited about the opportunity to leverage content sharing into creating better motivation, incentivizing users, and potentially enabling us to get to a bigger reach, and hopefully also kind of take care of what is a major cost for many of direct-to-consumer services, which is the cost of acquisition. So potentially, if we can incentivize content sharing and bringing into our ecosystem, I think we can potentially see a lot of value to our business.
Okay, so Chandra, you've got quite a few slides to get through here, and we haven't got an awful lot of time. Do you want to take us through some of these, and maybe Michelle, you can jump in and talk us through how this came about, how it developed, and why the solution that you're proposing here? Yeah. So do you want to click the slides with that? That's it. Should work. There we go. So that's our champions, and that's our participants in the project. That's the team that's up here. It's not necessarily, I'm not part of the team that developed this, but that's the team that you're seeing here. We've talked a little bit about the concept. This goes back to the market opportunity that you saw.
Yeah, so we see that OTT is a buzzword, and everybody is enrolled into this, right? You know, you name any country, we see that a lot of OTT applications and the subscriber and the growth has been tremendous. Right? I think the sample says that, you know, this is a CAGR growth of about 15% or so. And so when we look at it, again, as I said, the problem it poses is like, you know, consumer is having too many choices and multiple application subscriptions, etc. So we were looking at, it is not only about the money, but it's also about how a consumer discovers the content, what he wants to consume, right? You know, see, this is the kind of a piece, the growth with the OTT is where we kind of, you know, latched onto the idea of the content sharing. So that's the basis of it. And even the innovation actually affects, or say kind of, you know, changes the way, and it kind of, you know, influences a lot of big group. So that gives the kind of, you know, momentum for this kind of a thing. So that's where it came into existence.
Don't worry about the detail. The slides are available online actually now, so you can get them afterwards. So let's keep.
Yeah. So the challenges, as I said, the current ecosystem, as I mentioned, it's like, you know, everything is subscription based. The premium content, not all the premium content you see is available through one, you know, application channel or a app means. And you need to have multiple subscriptions, and most used or say kind of, you know, demand content is always premium and locked into one of the you know, the platforms. And user is not empowered, you know, to kind of consume say per piece kind of a content which is available on multiple platforms. So and also if suppose if they need to have an access, but it can be a kind of a piracy means, right? You know, that way. So this is actually how kind of, you know, gave major triggers for us to innovate on this particular solution. Yeah, and also when we looked at the sharing, right? A sharing or a recommendation is nothing new, right? You know, we have been having recommendation systems as part of OTT platforms, etc. But when we look at a content referral through somebody known means, right? Like say suppose your friend or a colleague or, you know, somebody referring a content, it has a greater means of getting, you know, conversion, right? That's another big, you know, idea we kind of latched on. So that's how we leveraging these multiple aspects of it is how we kind of, you know, innovated and trying to build this innovation. Yeah. So the proposed idea is pretty simple. So it's basically you are a subscriber. Say suppose you are a subscriber of any OTT application means where you are paying a, you know, a monthly subscription, and and you have consumed a piece of content, and you think that this particular content is also of interest to some of your colleagues, friends, whom you know, because this is the same, the close circle. And through the means of this particular idea, you should be able to refer the content where they can actually consume the content, just a piece, only the piece of the content, without actually subscribing to the platform. So there are two means of sharing this particular or referring to the content. One is a way of gifting, and the other way of just referring a content where they can pay for the content and watch. You tell me, I think many of you would be kind of interested to actually consume. If say suppose, for example, the final match, a cricket match in India, right? I'm talking about of interest to them, but I don't want to keep tracking all the matches. But I just wanted to consume who have come to the finals, and I want to watch only that. But for that, I don't want to subscribe to that platform. So if somebody is actually referring me or endorsing me that content, and through which only for that piece of content, if I pay for it and consume, certainly I will be ready to pay higher cost. So that's the another way, and. This is basically a proposed idea where we are trying to realize it through NFT means.
And maybe I can jump in and say what role the blockchain plays in all of this, and how this is really palpably different. And I think Chandra said it at the beginning, which is in a traditional OTT model, the user's just really not engaged, meaning that the user is passively participating, and of course you have all the problems that you cited. In this particular model, you have an opportunity, particularly when you put a blockchain platform underneath this, so that when you are making a recommendation to the other party, there's a real incentive there. The ownership is meaningful, meaning that you actually own, through the attestation of the token on the chain, the content that you're referring. And finally, while we didn't get to this, you could, in the span of this particular pilot, right, you could also be retrading in both the tokens and the media that you have been recommended or shared. And that kind of model brings the fan directly into identification with the content and gives it a sort of first principle attachment that just doesn't exist in the traditional sense. The second thing that's very important about the blockchain role in this, and this is something very unique to the Fabric technology, is that you can also very specifically enforce the granularity of the authorization and the access based on the ownership of a token. So a subscription is a meaningful thing that isn't just a, let's call it Web 2 sort of database property that says I've subscribed, I paid my bill, therefore I get access. Instead, you have a actual minted token on the blockchain that your wallet possesses. It's irrefutable. It is your property. It's something also that could be resold by you if you wanted to. And that's what's used by the Fabric to authorize the content when you go to watch it. And the granularity of that can be controlled content by content. It can also be combined with other policies to constrain the windows, et cetera, of availability. And it creates this nice ecosystem where you can both own in and experience, recommend, as Chandra said, and then potentially even resell to one another as a follow-on.
So how much of this is new, as in like
it's all brand new. I mean, this is what we do as a platform, as the content blockchain, but this kind of a use case represents just this very bleeding edge of Web3 media.
Yeah. I think it's also new in terms of the kind of experiences that we are seeing today with content consumers. They're not relatively active. They don't necessarily participate. They're not sort of an agent of the content, passively consuming, and this provides an opportunity for them to take a different role.
Yeah, a much more sort of proactive approach to not only kind of sharing, but it being incentivized to do that.
And identifying.
And sports content is one of the greatest domains for this, because it really leans into that identification factor, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you ready? Can you take us through a sort of a demo for
certainly
some of this?
Just
how it might work.
Yeah. See, now when we looked at the innovation idea, now we are also looked at how seamlessly it can get integrated to the current OTT platforms, or if we wanted to radically change the platform itself to the completely content-based media fabric, like what Michelle and team has built. So both are possible here. So what I'm showing here is basically how it can get integrated with a traditional OTT platform. So where basically an operator decides that he wants to onboard this idea of actually sharing, like some of the assets he would decide, and he would enable them to share through app means. So once he shares, there is a kind of a subscription management which we integrate, and then through which we are able to achieve this particular thing, where we are using the permissive or a public blockchain, like which is where again we see that transaction costs are a little high, but it is possible to do in that particular way. So it is seamlessly the current OTT vendor need not have to do a lot of changes here. So we are bringing in a platform where it can seamlessly get integrated and enable them to share. And then there is a lightweight app means where they can consume. The new users or a free users, we call it as, they can seamlessly consume. This is a with traditional OTT platform. Now we are talking about how a purpose-built the media content platform like Alluvio can actually make this much simpler to integrate this, where whatever the OTT assets, assets identified a particular operator to be shared will actually get onboarded onto the content space in a neutral way called mezzanines, and then they get seamlessly gets transcoded and gets streamed on the need basis. And this is the kind of a thing where we don't need to actually do a lot of changes to the existing OTT operator ecosystem. So what happens is there can be multiple OTT operators who are choosing to go with this kind of idea. So all their assets can be onboarded onto this particular thing based on the need basis. They get built as mezzanines, and then they get streamed. So this is a very, very, very powerful mechanism to actually onboard this idea in a very quick way. So just believe that we could build this in just a couple of months, complete thing with a blockchain platform with Alluvio, right?
So the Teflix platform, Teflix, where's that? Who owns that? Where does that come from?
Yeah, it's basically, we just named it.
It's just your name
just
for it?
Just named it, So we built that as part of Tata Elixir, as I mentioned. So we both were participants who actually kind of development partners, like we created some of these things, Tata Elixir plus Alluvio, that as you see, these are all some things which we shared.
So that's the joint development platform.
Joint development.
Got it.
Yeah, just moving, sorry.
Okay, so let's go to the actual demo if we can.
Yeah. So maybe
a little bit about Alluvio, I think, first to come.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
about the fabric.
I'll be brief, but this pipeline shows just what Chandra said, that content space is a open environment where the content itself is encrypted and sharded into these chunks that live throughout the nodes of the decentralized network, and those provide an underpinning layer that then dynamically is used, drawn upon to build output on demand, which also works through a interface on the blockchain that controls access directly to the content. Imagine this in a decentralized environment that can have any size and scale, works globally, and the output that's built can be any kind of dynamic output, such as streaming content in this case. One other thing I mentioned is that's also a lot cheaper and less resource intensive than a traditional OTT and cloud stack. I mean, around 50 times. And the reason this matters in these use cases is you can start to really unlock a lot more participative content, and also increase the return, but just change the game so that you can bring so much more content into the picture with profitability.
Yeah.
Right.
You can.
Oh, sorry, I'm in charge of advancing these. This is my duty here. Okay. Also, obviously, the content blockchain network is global, and many parties involved in this. I just wanted to say a couple of points about this. The protocol that's behind this is very different than traditional pipelines. Instead of thinking about having pre-version files that are built on a transcoding cloud stack and images or video or what have you, and then pushed out to an edge CDN to pre-cache and then serve up to clients. This is a fully decentralized componentized, dynamic pipeline, where everything that's built is built from components. There are no file copies that are made, which sucks a lot of resource usage out of both the bandwidth and the storage. And then see the object itself. There is a behavior that's inherent that allows for everything that's generated to be defined as dynamic offerings, like a streaming output, and to be authorized through policy. And that policy is what can then be used to check attestations like token ownership. And the part that isn't quite so obvious on a slide like this is that object's parts have a cryptographic hash that allows them to have a signature that create a unique version, and that version is actually part of a blockchain contract. So all of this behavior about the content and what it's serving, and also the authorization, ends up being on the blockchain, or what we call attested to on the blockchain. And then that brings us to the concept demonstration. I guess we'll
before we start with that. So Alluvio, for those of those who don't know Alluvio, you've been doing deals with some of the big studios around the world, haven't you? And
yeah, I mean, this is the year where everything has moved from being sort of an experiment to being mainstream. And I think, I mean, the pandemic was the precipitative factor, as I'm sure many people would expect. What's on bigger brands, and this is something we can get into more in our own place at Hall 8, but there are many major media companies that are doing experiments and new projects like this. We back well, first of all, the Masked Singer with Fox, all their NFT properties, the Moonsault from WWE. There is a very exciting film project from Warner that's upcoming, which will be really interesting to see around this area. And then I think also, as you're thinking about the broadcast side with pure live streaming channels, we are showing now also authorization of content through tokens on other blockchains, like the Flow blockchain, for instance, with content from Turner, for example.
So my point was, this is happening, this is real, this is kind of beginning to move from the kind of the fringes to something very mainstream here. Yep. Yeah. With that, Chandra, why don't we go through the demo?
Yeah. See, this is basically the concept what we have built through app means. So we just wanted to quickly kind of demonstrate to this kind of images, which tells you how it is different from the current system, and where you see that even though it is actually very simple at the outset, but a lot of complexity in the behind, like any software system like which exhibits a simple behavior is actually abstracting a lot of complexity. That's a fundamental thing. So the first screen you look at is is a subscriber having access to the premium content. Now he's now looking at sharing it. You see that second screen, you see a share option, and you look at now two options come in. One is gifting and sharing. Gifting, or you can say content referral or sharing. So the gifting is basically you are the person who is recommending the content actually paying for the content, and you are asking your friend or colleague to actually consume it. So it gives, say for example, dad actually watched a content and he felt very good, and then he wants to gift it to a daughter, and then he can pay for it and gift it. She need not have to pay for it. So that's it is very seamlessly can be done through blockchain, through an NFT mechanism. And then now we looked at the other one is sharing a content. When you share a content, it goes and sits onto the other user who need not be a subscriber of the particular platform. Then when he looks at it, he wants to just explore. But now think that he has not consumed. He is just trying to explore. Now he actually clicks on it, and the very lightweight player will get installed on his particular mobile device, whatever the device is trying to consume. And there is a wallet also created, because that in a blockchain, a unique identity of a particular user is through the wallet ID, right? So, and now the shared content, he can actually pay for it if he thinks that it is good for him, because it's like, again, we are talking about user endorsed content, right? It's a much higher chance of consumption. Like, he can discard, or he can actually go pay for it only for the piece of content and then consume it. So that's what the kind of things we are talking about, through a very simple SMS notification mechanism, and then it gets installed, and then it gets into the Web3 wallet, what I said. And yeah, so now you are associating a wallet with a unique ID, and so that you can just, very basic, telephone number, etc. He is visible to the platform, and then he starts consuming the content. Yeah. So he just enables to consume the content. Just look at that, the freedom of mind for you, right? You wanted to have an access to a premium content without actually subscribing, and also your multiple of your friends can refer. It can be unified into the same app ecosystem. So that gives the the flexibility to this. Yeah. So now another thing what we are looking at is how do we kind of reward the behavior of sharing this, right? When somebody finds a piece of content and shares, we wanted to encourage that behavior of sharing through reward or incentivization. So that's what we are trying to do. And also it gels very well with the blockchain mechanism here. It actually can keep track of it. And once you kind of do the incentivization, he's actually claiming that basically we are through an NFT minting mechanism, right? It actually so he's encouraged to share more, if you look at, right? And it's kind of builds kind of a gamification, if you look at, right? You are actually out of number of subscribers, you are actually creating a kind of influencing mechanism. Like, whoever is sharing more, he's actually influencing, right, that way. And he's also getting rewarded for that. So
I might mention you can actually enumerate the sharing through blockchain transactions as well. So you could accumulate value that pays that user, for example, or that is underwritten by an advertiser, but in this transparent way, as opposed to the classical sell the user's data for influence.
Right. Exactly. Thanks, Michelle. So now going back to the receiver's flow, right? Like, as I said, receiver actually getting that particular thing, settling for if it is not gifted, then he is just settling for that particular content. We have just listed those screens here. And how he gets access to that through a wallet settlement. And then there are multiple payment options you can do, like, whatever. The crypto also is another way possible, where whatever he has gained through, maybe he can settle for those cryptos and then, gain the access to the content. Yeah, so once he gains, he just, it culminates into the playing. And now looking at, right, we looked at the freedom of advantage for the consumers, and also the incentivizing for the users. Now let us look at what is there for the OTT operators. Apart from accelerated monetization, they can also look at what is the kind of content which is trending, which is getting monetized higher. Like, based on this, actually they can take a decision on what kind of a contents he can push more. So now if you look at see, currently you take any Netflixes or Primes, the content they are able to reach only to their subscribers. Now through this mechanism, they are able to reach it to the extended user base.
That's right.
Now that's a very powerful, because they are not subscribers yet, but they have the information of those subscribers, right? And now potentially you can actually give them a teaser to get their information about them, and then potentially they can be converted to a subscriber. That's one of the possibility. Or you may leave it and push the targeted ads and increase the monetization of your premium content what you have. Otherwise, it is not getting monetized. Think that if, say, suppose you have 1 million subscribers, and 1 million subscribers, even 100K users try to share it, you look at that accelerated monetization possibilities of the content. Otherwise, it is sitting idle without any opportunity. So that's the kind of attractiveness it brings. So this is all some kind of a dashboards what we created as part of this POC. Again, thanks to Michelle and team to provide all this information through the platform. So we were able to kind of get it done. Yeah. So I'll just kind of
Yeah. What about? I mean, to me, that looks amazing in terms of the kind of the dashboard and the kind of the analytics that it can provide you. What about the challenges of integrating with different systems, this approach?
Well, one thing that this, I think, really natively shows is the importance of a developer ecosystem. The Tata team really developed the application on top of our APIs. We worked together in that. And in this kind of a world, it is all about the ecosystem. As Chandra showed, that content space has content from any number of owners. It's all encrypted and owned independently in terms of the security. And that space then allows for a substrate that multiple applications can talk to. And those multiple applications, like what's been built here, are really designed to be, very pop-up, easy to create, and also to have multiple apps pointing at the same underlying content objects, which allows for a lot of good reuse. I think the essence of doing these kinds of things well together is first to get the knowledge across, right? This is a new paradigm of thinking about authorization and also the incentive structures. And then once the basics work, then to think about what the follow-on possibilities are. And what I think is most interesting here is there's so many different directions you can take this, because you can go further with the sharing and create a whole sort of mini, almost a market-making function around that, right? The other thing that you can do with this with the wallets, and we didn't really get into that, there's sort of a seamless experience of a media wallet in this, is that wallet could be expanded upon to do other things such as advertising, but in this new sort of data protecting way where you could have advertisers have offers that appear that are also part of the rewards that go along with the content sharing. And those rewards themselves, we have other cases of this where we're now having on-chain redeemable offers, for example, that can be tied directly to a given sponsor. So many possibilities.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Tim and Avram, looking at this list of kind of benefits here, what do you see as the kind of key aspects that could support some elements of your business? Looking at these advantages.
Yeah, I think we're always looking at how to kind of maximize what we call the content ROI. How can we maximize the monetization potential of content that we've invested in, produced, developed, etc. And I think this kind of provides a long tail of options on how we can potentially monetize it through a community that is engaged, that is motivated, that is involved. And these are, their terminology of the experiences that we're looking to change and to evolve from a, kind of a lean back experiences with our content, looking to take it to the next step.
Do you have some forms of content within your sports kind of, archives, or that you could look to monetize this through this approach?
Yeah, I think potentially every kind of sport has the ability to participate in something like that, and some of our original content as well, definitely.
And Tim, from your perspective, as a champion, your role in this is not only to give guidance to the team through the development, but when we come to this stage to sort of validate that that's something that actually we could find some potential opportunities with.
Absolutely. For us, it also relates to the value of the content in a different way than for Avram, because we don't manage the content, right? We're talking about a digital canvas, and there's no listing on the New York Stock Exchange for the value of Lawrence of Arabia, for example. Like, to me, I might be willing to pay $150 for a ticket to see it in an amazing way. I might have to pay you $150 to sit through it, right? So that for us is important. And this whole collection aspect, I come back to that.
Yeah.
If I go back to my running water analogy, probably nobody has a special glass for drinking fountain water, right? But you have a special glass for how you drink your glass of wine, right? And right now in the digital space, it's just very difficult to collect. And it's not just about streaming. There are models where you can buy, you can download, and you own. But it's still in the hands of one company. There's too many people involved, and there's too many ecosystems. Like a lot of the stuff that we talk about today relates back to digital art, where that's where my interest in the opportunity of blockchain started. But still, those ecosystems, even today, are developing separate from each other, where, from my perspective, that should all come together in blockchain-enabled platforms. And then, to me, whether Avram is successful creating high-quality content and bringing to the customers, or it's someone else, it's more from the customer's perspective. You know, I used to say a silly thing like, you can make money with a movie about carrots. But this is really what this is about, as long as you can find the people that are really excited about carrots.
Is that really niche and really quite premium, though? Is this going to be, from that point of view, is it going to be fringe?
I would not call it fringe. I mean, I don't think collecting is fringe at all. Of course,
there can be mass forms of collecting as well.
Yes, and of course you can look at, you know, there's different people that have different levels of private theaters, for example, where some people have a theater that rivals the best commercial cinema in the world. But that's not really what this is about. I think just the value of being able to create a collection and own digital assets is key. And I think this is why it started in digital art, because there it's more obvious. Without authenticated ownership, that market just doesn't exist. But when you then apply that thinking to movies and sports and pretty much anything that excites people.
Yeah,
it's a gigantic opportunity.
And I think on your question, Mark, the key is that this is the most egalitarian form of digital asset ownership there could be, because there's two, Tim said it much better than I'm about to, but I'll make an attempt. On the one hand, now anyone can be a fan, a collector, an owner of anything meaningfully. That's the digital scarcity he's talking about. And the second is that the efficiency, the intrinsic efficiency makes it possible to do that without all that externality of cost. You suck that away. So then you really can have a market for this, right?
Yeah,
that's the idea.
So, Chandra, what have been the most challenging aspects of developing this?
Yeah. So, we kind of initially looked at this idea almost like 2.5-3 years back, and tried actually utilizing, you know, some kind of Ethereum-based blockchain. What we looked at is, you know, one is apart from the setting up, complexity, etc., all these things to be developed, you know, specific to media, so which we find much more easy and you know, quick with Illuvio. So that's one. Second thing is, when we talk about the blockchain, a lot of people, you know, talk about, you know, there's only a buzzword and not getting into the mainstream. But we don't see that anymore. I think a lot of these kind of use cases, you know, democratizing this and, you know, percolate into the mainstream. And for example, you know, this simple, you know, mechanisms, when the transaction costs are come down, I think, you know, is certainly percolate into the mainstream. So the blockers are mostly from the technology and application perspective. Then we could find a sweet spot for you know, in this OTT ecosystem. So
yeah, I think you've got a couple more slides on some of the. I thought you had, but on learnings, and I thought you were going to take us through some of the things that you would advise around this in terms of things to be aware of as you're developing solutions like this.
Yeah. So basically, you know, solutions like this, initial the people who can actually, you know, agree to onboard this kind of a solutions to pilot. So that is one, certainly the entry barrier we see. But a lot of people, when we bounce this kind of ideas, we see a lot of our customers in operator space, they are very interested for two reasons. One is, you know, the pure opportunities having this extended user base, basically giving this and, you know, having an access to the potential user base, and also retaining the existing, you know, subscribers through way of rewards and engagement, basically. So that is what we see. I don't see any problems as such. You know, blockers are mainly into the technology side.
Maybe.
It's a new way of thinking, I would say, if I could add. I think that in my mind is the number one impediment, is that this is so different than the entrenched idea of how you publish media to make it available to consumers. And also, to Tim's point, it's also so different, the entrenched idea of there is some company that is going to make license the content from everybody and make it available to you to passively watch. It's so different from that I think that's really where all of the intersection is right now, to open the possibilities in people's minds. The tech is there.
Yeah.
Where do we go next with this From this proof of concept, what's the next step? Where's the industry roadmap for something like this?
Hopefully do all of this for real.
Yeah, good answer. Okay, so do you think you'll continue working together around this concept, or do you think that...
I hope so.
I think your answer about the ecosystem, right, and now kind of opening your platform for other developers is going to be a key aspect of what happens next.
Well, and what's been discussed here is, I think, indicative of the use cases that are on everybody's minds. And this was something we all did together in earnest, and I think it applies to several areas, all the way from what you might consider a sort of super fan unique content experience all the way over to mainstream sports, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, from our perspective, I think this is a very fluid and active go forward.
Yeah. Tim, Avram, were you pleased you've been involved in the Accelerator program and projects like this year? Is this something that you'll continue?
Absolutely. I mean, from my perspective, having been involved a bit in the digital art aspect, I was starting to think already we can actually expand this to everywhere. And then when we had the opportunity to participate in this, it was like, well, this propels us a little bit into the future. And the other thing, I guess, that's really interesting for me is it's very empowering, not only for the consumer, but also for the provider. So this is not a thing where you say, okay, one side really wins. This is both consumers, providers can really benefit from this. And when we talk about the use cases, there's hundreds, right? It's not the platform that determines the use case. It's the platform that enables all these use cases. And once you open this up to the world, they'll come up with 100 other use cases that we haven't even talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, potential usage or application of this into the gaming, and even any of the endorsements through which conversion can be better is one thing. And the main thing, in the content space, we see that it's basically content driven rather than platform driven. So user is more empowered rather than platform, in that way. So very straightforward Web3 use case, empowering the consumers.
Well, thank you, Chandra. Thank you for all of the hard work as well. I mean, there's been many months of very late nights with you and the Alluvio guys all over the world in developing this. Well done, a great proof of concept, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Avram. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Tim.